Be very careful. Look around. Weird creatures are waiting to strike. Their tools are bizarre. They have eye-popping defenses. And when they feed their young, nothing is sacred. Nothing is safe when the world's weirdest land creatures are on the loose. The freaks on land. Only some of life's challenges can be solved with ordinary jaws and claws. It takes truly weird tools to solve truly tough problems. Tongue detection and tongue projection. Web warriors and treetop signalers. These are some of the strangest adaptations in nature's toolbox. This is the eye, a kind of lemur found only on the island of Madagascar. Local legends cast it as a demon, a creature that can kill just by pointing a finger. The truth is more natural than supernatural, but they're right about the finger. To find its prey, it uses a multi-purpose digit. The changes in sound build a mental map of hollow channels inside. It cups its ears to gather the slightest vibration that could signify something to eat, like a grub. Sharp incisors rip away the bark. Its bony middle finger changes roles from a scanner to a scraper. It claws in and out of gaps, enlarging the hole. The grub doesn't know what the eye is, but it does know what it means. Death, if it can't wriggle away. The eye locks in. The finger transforms into a hook. A sharp fingernail impales the grub. It's dragged up, out, and into the eye's mouth. By day, Madagascar is just as weird. Chameleons are more famous as hiders than hunters. But this perception isn't always accurate. When it comes to catching prey, the panther chameleon has an arsenal of tools at its disposal. Each eye can operate independently and rotate a full 180 degrees to spot prey a few meters away. It feeds on insects that can hop, fly, and scurry away to a safe distance. But what's a safe distance when you've got a tongue like this? Let's look at that again, this time in slow motion. Special tissues spit tongue out of the mouth like moving at over 1,600 kilometers an hour. The tongue unspools almost half a meter to reach the far branch. A mucus-covered tip slams into the bug. It's reeled back in and eaten. Like many spiders, this femme fatale sits in her web, her tool for everything. There, she waits for food to come to her. That's not as easy as it sounds. She has 8 eyes, but barely uses them. She perceives much of her world through her hairy legs. She finds her prey mainly by sensing vibrations along her web. Then, she charges blindly across her high-wire grid. First, she bites. Neurotoxins paralyze the struggling moth. Digestive enzymes turn its insides into goo. Then she wraps it up. Her back legs pull silk from her spinneret and encase the moth. The wrapping keeps the spider out of harm's way, and if she's already eaten, it preserves the moth for a later meal. There are no forks and knives in Spiderland, and no teeth either. Instead, she sucks up the insides of her bug burrito as a liquid lunch. Even a male of the species is fair game. He approaches her with an 8-toed dance step that vibrates her web with a clear message. I'm your boyfriend, not your breakfast. She lets him approach. He spools his sperm into her. But once his dance moves are over, so is he. She can't help herself. It's just too easy. And now, a postcard from the edge of weirdness. After a hard day of harassment from hungry lions, this hippo needs a little pampering, and it knows just where to go to get the full spa treatment. A lovely spring in Kenya. Carp nip away dead skin and parasites. Cichlid fish clean the bristles on its tail. But it's the barbel fish that are responsible for this weird little postcard. They take care of the, hind quarters, and they're pretty diligent about it. In fact, they compete for the honor because hippo dung is full of nutrients. As its skin is pampered and cleansed, it gets the same treatment in its mouth and ends up feeling like a totally new hippo. Scaly skin is a bonus for the pangolin when it's out looking for dinner. The pangolin is not very ferocious. It doesn't even have teeth. And it's not very fast. In fact, it has to wobble on its hind legs and tail. But it does have 2 formidable tools. First, its claws are huge. This is nature's backhoe. It can pry out rocks and rip up hard, dry ground. It does so with a singular purpose: to find ants and termites. And once it rips open the side of the ant colony, it dives in head first. Its second weird tool is a long, sticky tongue, which slips through every crack and crevice. Continually lubricated by an overactive salivary gland, the tongue gathers up thousands of ants every day. The ants haven't evolved a new way to defend their colony. They stick with the old standby: swarm and bite. But But the pangolin scales are a formidable obstacle. Its eyes have a thick lid. Its ears and nose have special valves that close off when the ants attack. The surviving ants may be able to regroup and rebuild. But when they do, the pangolin will be there to destroy it all over again. Too bad ants don't have this monkey's nose for detecting trouble. He is the leader of a small harem of females and young. For the proboscis monkey, size matters. Nearly 75 centimeters tall, the males weigh twice as much as the smaller females. And a big nose generates big interest from the ladies. This stretch of mangrove swamps in Borneo is his domain. And here he must watch over his harem. They forage in the trees for young leaves and fruit. Crocodiles lurk underneath. This mother knows how to cross quietly and with little splashing. But the youngsters try a different method. Leaping across keeps them out of the water. Mostly. But the noise attracts the croc. And the mother is still midstream. The male spots the crocodile. The large nose resonates the warning call, amplifying it over the noise of the water. The mother turns. The croc moves in for the kill. But this time, the croc must search elsewhere. The mother was just a touch quicker, winning by a nose. The best offense against weird tools is a demented defense. Hunters can easily become the hunted if they're not careful. While it hurts to skip a few meals, it hurts even more to never eat again. That's why these animals have evolved some mind-boggling defenses. Poisons, projectiles, and feats of speed. Hailing from the Pacific Northwest, the rough-skinned newt is one rough customer. Looking for tiny invertebrates, it has wandered out of its riverside territory and into the garter snakes. The newt seems unaware or unconcerned. Tiny glands in its skin are home to deadly bacteria. They produce tetrodotoxin, a lethal poison that paralyzes the muscles, stopping the diaphragm and heart. Garter snakes, though, have evolved a tetrodotoxin tolerance. An arms race between snake and newt has led to higher and higher levels of both resistance and toxicity, to the point that the newt contains enough poison to kill a creature far larger than its normal predators, like a human. So the question becomes, which animal is further along in the race? The newt arches its back and displays its orange underbelly, a clear signal that it's not to be messed with. The garter snake decides it's not worth the risk. But the same cannot be said for all predators. The newt returns to its stream, only to encounter another threat, one closer on the family tree. a bullfrog. Bullfrogs are insatiable and indiscriminate. It swallows the newt whole. Inside the bullfrog's belly, it's a race between the stomach's acids and the newt's poison. The frog collapses and dies. The newt climbs out and is finally on the way home. Sometimes the best defense is a helpful friend. This is not a plant. It's a sloth. Sloths are tree dwellers and possibly the slowest moving mammals in the world, with an average ground speed of 1.8 to 2.4 meters per minute. Algae grow in the sloth's shaggy fur, which attracts friendly moths. Their presence helps conceal the sloths from predators, who mistake it for just another lump of moth-infested greenery. Once a week, the sloths must descend from their arboreal homes to poop. The moths breed in the sloth's excrement, so it's a good partnership, most of the time. But the sloth's movements capture attention. They don't call this guy Eagle Eyes for nothing. Even the very best camouflage has its limits. And soon, there's nothing left of the sloth. When camouflage as a defense is not an option, learn to stand your ground. With the Goliath bird-eating spider. It's a tarantula with a slight PR problem. Big? Yes. Its nearly 30-centimeter long leg span could cover a person's head. But bird-eating? Practically never. It prowls the Amazon mainly in search of insects, with the occasional frog or rodent, like this one. Fangs almost 2.5 centimeters long pump neurotoxins into the dying mouse. The spider hauls it back to its burrow, liquefying the insides before sucking its meal dry. But this fearsome predator has predators of its own. There are some mammals and snakes that would make short work of it. And it can't hide if it doesn't even know they're there. Its eyesight is poor. But this one's luck, though, is spot on. Usually, the spider relies on vibration-sensitive hairs to warn it of danger. Tonight, danger takes the form of a coati. The spider bares its fangs, warning, back off or be bitten. But the coati isn't frightened. The spider needs a long-range weapon. Fortunately, it has one. Many, actually. Other hairs on its body are tipped with tiny stinging barbs. By rubbing its legs, it flicks them up into the air in a cloud of miniature missiles. Like tiny slivers, they burn eyes, nose, and mouth. The coati's appetite is gone and so is the Goliath bird eater. We move from the jungles of South America to the deserts of North America. The horned lizard. Its known aliases include the horned frog and the horny toad, but it's no amphibian, just a one-reptile wrecking crew with a bizarre self-defense strategy. We'll get to that in a second. It eats mostly harvester ants, but it doesn't have any fancy hunting methods. When a foraging column of ants crosses its path, it laps them up. The ants try to fight back, but their mandibles are of little use against the lizard's scales, no matter how hard they try. But a coyote is a different story. And that's when the lizard rolls out its weird defense. It fires its own version of pepper spray. Thin blood vessels around the eyes rupture under pressure and squirt blood out at the attacker. In addition to the ick factor, the blood contains canine repellent chemicals. Disgusted and weirded out, the coyote flees, leaving the lizard to wait for more ants. Crocodiles are fearsome predators. In the water. On land, one smaller species, the freshwater crocodile of Australia, has developed a special move, the gallop. This is the Olympic sprinter of the croc family, racing at 24 kilometers per hour. It's an impressive feat considering they spend most of their time in the water and not on land. Running like a very large rabbit, its back legs propel it up and forward. Its front legs touch down and reset for the next push over land or through the air. Weirdness is not always on the outside. Sometimes the strangest things are on the inside. Behaviors, strategies, and habits that seem crazy, and maybe are crazy. How else do you explain poison gourmets and flying monkeys? Discover the method behind the madness. Our unlikely heroines are fire ants, a colony several 100,000 strong. Rapacious, tenacious, and industrious, they are impossible to eradicate as long as their queen is alive. But their colony faces just such a threat. The river beside it is flooding. The deluge rushes in. What else to do then but swim? The colony floats out as a living raft. The most precious members of the colony, the larvae and the queen ant, are kept safely dry in the middle. The queen ant can give birth to some 3 million ants over her lifetime. If they can reach dry land, they stand a good chance of rebuilding. But there is danger below. The fish pick off the ants one by one. If enough ants are pulled down, the raft will collapse, and the colony will be destroyed. The ants grimly hold on and reach the other side. They hoist the ant larvae up to dry ground ensuring the survival of their colony for future generations. And with their survival secure, the fire ants revert to type, attacking every living thing in sight. A different type of killer stalks the treetops of the Amazon. It is ravenous, relentless, and without pity. The pygmy marmoset. It may look like 100 grams of cute and fluffy, but the world's smallest monkey is no plaything. It can leap 4.5 meters in a single bound and move along the slightest of branches to snatch its prey. Insects, though, are merely an afternoon protein boost. This family of marmosets gets its main meal from a bump-covered tree. The bumps are scar tissue built up over months of daily attacks by these vicious sapsuckers. The marmosets feed mostly on gum. Using specially adapted teeth and claws, they rip open the freshly covered wounds and keep the sap flowing until the tree is too scarred to provide any longer. Then they'll move on to fresh territory that's inhabited by other marmosets. Marmoset families are like the Hatfields and McCoys and don't take lightly to interlopers. The incoming Hatfields invade the McCoys' turf, itching for a fix. The McCoys retreat to a nearby tree. They watch helplessly as the newcomers raid their stash. Chirping and scent marking, the parents gather up their frightened young and launch a counterattack. The Hatfields are forced to flee. The sweet nectar of success. They may look cute, but don't get between a marmoset and its gum. It looks like an ordinary place. A country garden. But something weird is going on. Hedgehogs are on the prowl. Not for food or for mates, but for strange smells. Like these cans of turpentine. And when the hedgehogs smell something intriguing, they lick it up. Turpentine is hazardous to humans, but hedgehogs have a strong resistance to toxins. Other hedgehogs find a dropped pack of cigarettes and start to munch on the tobacco. What comes next is even stranger. They lather up and spread it all over their spines. It might take a while to cover all 5,000 spines, but hedgehogs have the time and the contortion skills to get the job done. Why do they do this? The experts have their theories. Some argue that hedgehogs anoint themselves to tip their spines with poison that is toxic to their enemies. Others maintain the toxins may be used to kill off parasites. And still other scientists think they're trying to fool predators by covering their own scent. Whatever the reason, it's definitely weird behavior. This next weird species has no spines to cover itself with. In fact, it's naked. The naked mole rat, to be precise. Although it's neither a mole nor a rat. And much about their behavior is strange. They spend their entire lives in virtually complete darkness, weaving their way through an underground network of burrows and tunnels. Within their dark universe, they've evolved a rigid society that has more in common with ants or bees than with a typical mammalian social circle. At the top is a long, strong queen. She is the mother of all the other mole rats in the colony, which may total a few dozen or a few hundred. As long as she lives, she and a few chosen boy toys are the only ones that breed. The queen keeps the rest from mating by sheer intimidation. Their lives are all work and no foreplay. Some mole rats are drafted as soldiers to protect the colony from rival mole rats and predators. A quick sniff determines insider from outsider. Other mole rats tend to the young, clean burrows, dig tunnels, and look for food. Their giant incisors actually are outside their mouths, so the mole rats can shovel away without eating dirt. They dig in teams. The lead digger carves out the tunnel. Others pass the dirt back up the tunnel and out onto the surface. Going backwards or forwards is all the same. Though nearly blind, special hairs on their body help guide them and tell them where they're going. And even when traveling in the tunnels, each one's status in the hierarchy is clearly visible. The more senior members of the colony take the high road, while the juniors wriggle through underneath. The tunnels are only centimeters wide, but a full-fledged colony can stretch for almost a kilometer. All this work is done to find their principal food, tubers scattered across the savanna. One of these giant roots can feed a colony for 2 to 3 weeks. And though they are born into a strict hierarchy, when it comes to food, everyone is equal. If anything makes the honey badger weird, it's probably its utter fearlessness. Though it's only about a half a meter long and 13.6 kilograms, this honey badger is so combative, it can drive off bigger animals like jackals and leopards. And while many animals avoid bees, the honey badger dives right into their hive to eat their larvae. The badger's thick skin offers some protection from bee stings. Later, the badger spots a puff adder with some freshly killed prey. Puff adders are among the most venomous snakes in the world. One bite from these fangs could kill a lion. But that's not going to stop this honey badger from stealing the snake's dinner. And when the snake's dinner is not enough, the honey badger goes after the snake itself. But this time around, the honey badger finally may have bitten off more than it can chew. It looks like a goner. But 2 hours later, the badger rises like a phoenix from the ashes, and seemingly ravenous as ever, goes back to its meal. All animals have the need to breed. In the game of life, he who reproduces wins. But finding a mate is not always enough. Parents must do whatever it takes to give their young an edge in the battle for survival. They are tucked inside pouches and hidden underground, cleaned, weaned, and carried around. And some parents even die for their unborn young. This praying mantis has been superbly engineered for speed and power. And has a voracious appetite for other insects. A little too voracious, if you ask this male. Autumn is in the air, and he's feeling frisky. But time is not on his side. He must mate before the killing winter arrives. This is his best chance. A well-fed female is a well-mannered one. He latches on to her shapely thorax and cautiously inserts sperm into her abdomen. The female waits patiently, or is it hungrily? He has all the time to wonder. Mating can last for hours. But not this time. She devours his head. This doesn't stop their affair. If anything, his dying spasms increase the amount of sperm delivered. When the female has had enough, she breaks things off and dumps him. A harsh fate? Not necessarily. Unlike thousands of other mantises who died early, he got to breed. In the game of life, that's a resounding victory. Munching on his carcass provides her with additional nourishment she can use when she lays her eggs. Up to 200 of them. They'll stay here over the winter and hatch in the spring. But not all mothers are so murderous. Gray kangaroos like to keep their young close by. Very close. A baby roo will call its mother's pouch home for almost a year. But how it gets there in the first place is a strange and harrowing journey. At 1 month old, the baby roo, barely more than the size of a jelly bean, emerges from one of its mother's 2 uteri. Once it's outside her body, it grips her fur, and though it still hasn't developed eyes, it instinctively relies on its forelegs to crawl up towards her pouch. It takes a few minutes for the tiny roo to reach the pouch. That's it, there. Within minutes, it reaches her pouch and latches on to its mother's teat. That's enough travel to suit the young roo for a long while. Over the next few months, it grows inside the pouch. Even once it ventures outside, it's still not ready for cross-country trekking. For 9 more months, this joey will rely on its mother's pouch for shelter, transportation, and protection if it senses danger. Even after it leaves the pouch, it stays by its mother's side, nursing for an additional 1 to 6 months. The pouch, though, is now off limits. Its mother will already be carrying her next baby. From now on, the joey will have to travel on its own 2 feet. A baby is the beginning of something special. Usually dinner. Just ask any tadpole. These teeming and tasty treats are a favorite meal for bugs, fish, and even each other. It's a rare, tough pollywog that grows up to crawl out of the water. In its forest home of South America, the Darwin's frog resembles an overweight leaf. But not all that extra weight is its own. The male's vocal sac is reserved for another purpose, raising his young. The female will lay 3 to 7 eggs. Those that hatch into tadpoles are gulped up by the father until they're ready to fend for themselves. Inside his vocal sac, they transform into miniature versions of their old man. It's a sheltered life. They don't get out much, but they make it out alive. Which is more than we can say for this furry fellow. Whose untimely death is a bonanza for this next weird creature, the burying beetle. These beetles take recycling to a bizarre extreme. For this enterprising insect, a cadaver is a perfect place to raise a family. A female arrives. Love is in the stinky air. Impressed with his find, she moves in, or rather down. The beetles will bury the body up to half a meter underground. They must hide it from vultures and the many other scavengers who fancy a shrew. For the other scavengers, a dead shrew is just another meal. But for the burying beetles, this cadaver is far more than a food source. It's their nursery. Burying it is only the first step in a very long remodeling process. Their mandibles strip away the fur. Chemicals are secreted over the body to prevent it from spoiling, until it becomes unrecognizable from its former shrew self. It's the beetle's equivalent of a well-stocked fridge, ready for the arrival of many hungry babies, up to 30, depending on the size of the corpse. The parents protect them, clean them, and even feed them. They chew up the corpse and regurgitate it as beetle baby formula. By the time the corpse is gone, the larvae will be ready to transform into adults. They'll go out into the world in search of a freshly dead body of their very own. Burying beetles for sheer icky weirdness. Your cadaver bassinet can hardly be outdone. But the competition's been tough. With spike-covered bandits and armor-plated rustlers, giant battles, and tiny attacks, the world's weirdest animals are a creepy bunch of critters, and you'd better be ready to jump out of their way.